definitely did not rush out this title because we were on a deadline for Laura.
Never.
Oh. This is us.
Hello everyone, I'm Cynthia, and this is Miles.
We're going to wake up while we get to talking, I promise. We're in a liminal state, as I realized earlier. We'll start with Cynthia.
I'm Cynthia. I'm Sai part of Sai Mai Mai. So my background is largely in design. Before we started Sai Mai Mai, I did a lot of projects in kind of entertaining spaces, in very entertaining branded spaces. I worked with a lot of kind of famous IPs such as Joker, Snoopy, Lil Nas X, and then bringing the IP synergies through a brand environment and to engage with the audience. I always believe in my visual design and graphic design being a very strong tool to amplify any sort of experiences that we do. I also did music videos for some pop stars and a lot of mobile activations in my past experience.
Yep, and that is me. For those who don't know, I have been in the experiential field after sort of migrating from motion graphics and VFX. About 12 years ago, I started at local projects, since worked with Second Story, Potion, Hyperquake as their sort of creative director of experiential. Before Cynthia and I started Sai Mai Mai, where she now runs. For those who have heard, I am now a creative director at GNA, but this is, Sai Mai Mai is more like a religion as far as I'm concerned. We started this scene together, and what we're showing today is very much an encapsulation of our sort of design and theory beliefs. And I think our work will back that up. But I think of myself largely as not necessarily a designer in the same sense that Cynthia is. I have found my greatest joy, and I think project success in intense storytelling. A lot of my projects have been in the larger museum space or cultural spaces or even game spaces like you see here with that Manchester United project. I'm not a technician, but I do like to think of these tools as ways of activating the environments that we work in unique and special ways. So we're based in Jersey City, proudly so. We've decided just to own that, you know.
When we have international clients, we tell them that we're based in New York City, but yeah, for most times we be honest that we're based in Jersey City. And this is our lovely office with lots of plants. We have more plants now. This is a photo from a couple months ago, but we really love our space.
A lot of the plants have died. So this is our lovely team. We've developed quite a little staff on our hands lately. We're very proud of this team. I think what's interesting is that when we started the studio, Sai Mai Mai, it was just the two of us, and frankly, it wasn't really much of a studio at all. It was just two people who I think had very compatible design and project level beliefs. And just by being, I think, who we are and being authentic to ourselves in the work, we have attracted quite a little family over here, including people like Diane, who came out of Deep Local, a lot of SCAD people up here as well. Lola, who's sitting over there in the back, is also a big part of our team. And Kerr and Amy, Mungna, all of these people sort of make us who we are. I think what's really special as a women-founded and run team is we don't have like a rule. We don't not hire men or anything, but we do tend to attract a certain kind of people who really like our aesthetic and sort of align with these beliefs. And I think, much like Jersey City, we've just decided to lean into it. And it all started with this crew over here, Reem and Kathy, who are not, I believe, here today, but they were the start of our design and motion design capabilities when we really started to lean more into content.
And this is kind of just a capsule view of what we do in general. So we do a lot of experiential design, and we design interactive in physical, both in physical and the digital spaces. And this is the digital spaces. We also work with gaming teams and do gaming activations for brands as well. We also start to do just experience in exhibition places, which is my personal interest and passion as well, because I really like artistic approach, exhibitions, love all that. And we always been doing a lot of big scale media for either OOH or the media existing in the indoor spaces. And lastly but not least, we're also working a lot of live event spaces these days. We see this emerging need for live events to have very immersive experience or very large scale media. It has more and more needs these days.
And so we'll get into sort of our initial provocation. And this is very much rooted in the kinds of work we've been doing between those fields that Cynthia was just talking about, where we've had a chance to spend quite a bit of time at this point with a lot of different kinds of audiences. As a new studio, especially a new studio that consists of very young designers, young founders, I think we tend to take our projects on a little bit differently. A lot of our clients, especially brands like Coach, have hired us, I think, very much because of our youth, in a sense, and that gives us a sort of a special outlook on like the younger audiences and emerging audiences who are coming into the field. And so we ask, why are the tools that should be connecting people largely dividing them? Which for me, as someone who has been working in experiential in the creative tech field for quite some time, has been quite a struggle to contend with myself, because I think it's easy to get excited about a lot of the tools that we've become very familiar with over a period of time, and yet, as I say, emerging audiences are just not really as enticed by them, and in fact are starting to feel, in some cases, very isolated by them, and I'll get into what I mean by that. I won't read out slides very regularly, but I'll just read this. When spectacular displays and shinier pixels feel like barriers intended to sell, and distrust for AI continues to sow anxiety, how are we using our best tools to reach audiences and invite them in? And as we get into this, what I'm not saying is that we should not be using these tools in any case. But what I'm saying is like our understanding as creatives, especially those who have become more experienced and have been using these tools for a long time, what we are seeing is a divide between us as creatives and users of those tools and the consumers and audiences and people who are also on the other side of them. And so we think customer experience is at an inflection point. And I think the rest of our presentation in large sense is really the sort of expansion of this thesis. But Forrester recently did a very interesting study that we can share. There's a few studies in this, and we'll share them out for those who want it. But when looking at brands like Coach and some of the other brands that we work with, they're finding less and less trust or intrigue or reliability in consumer loyalty. And I think you can actually apply a lot of this over into even the cultural spaces and other sectors that we work with, in that a lot of these brands are getting very excited when they're thinking about using things like AI chatbots, which feel really fun and interesting when you're talking about having a conversation with a non-flat, non-linear object. But that's just not necessarily the reaction we're getting out of the tools when we put them into practice. And so audiences are simply not impressed. What used to be really cool, these spectacles, these giant screens and things that we certainly make a lot of, and they're going to be in this presentation, we're having to rethink the content that we are putting in them and how we are working with that content to reach those same audiences.
Yeah, so Salsa Mama's approach is we always stick to this very authentic approach. Is we want to make a very authentic experience to touch our audience. And this authenticity can come in a lot of different ways. So in one of the projects, in this example, so this is an interactive experience we did for Coach a couple years back. And then this experience, it actually doesn't have a profound story. I'm just gonna say it out loud. And this is a new brand, and the Coach just launched. And they launched up this brand based on the marketing research. They think Gen Z would love sustainable material, would love this kind of visual, and it's a result of marketing. So then they asked us to design an experience based on the result of the marketing, but also touch the audience. Then you see like there's like a little bit of contradicting things there. So when we approach this experience, we didn't intend to, we're gonna educate you a lot of things about sustainable material. Instead, we're approaching a more emotional way. We wanted people to walk in this experience and feel joy and happiness, and that's it. That's our only goal. So there's no product you will see in this experience, in this room. It's simply just a room that we designed these cloud canvas, so you walked in, and then the touch designer capture you, and then capture you becoming a cloud. And then the fun thing we did is because it detects up to 3 people, so we give each person a different gooey eyes. It was a wild idea pitched to Coach, and they love it. They didn't ask why they have gooey eyes. It's not important. But people love it, and they start to track themselves in the space. And then they realize, oh, I'm actually this cloud, and they start to move around. Which, if you see here, it's probably completely unrelated to the products, but people walk away with this happiness. and then they remember, oh, this is a cloud-looking, new brand that the coach launched.
Yeah, those who've seen maybe my Future Spaces talk have heard me talk about joy as a provocation, and I think this is a really great application of that, where brands are actually willing to deconstruct and do things in some cases that frankly, like even the museum clients that I have are not always willing to do because of their preciousness.
Yeah, this is a short video, and this project was initially launched in Singapore, and then traveled to Japan and China.
We've also had a hand in a lot of the in-store design as well.
Yeah. And here is another experience that we also did with Coach. So yeah, let's play that video. So Coach wants to design this like kind of artistic exhibition in China. They always come to us without a clear brief. So so they had this thing of ASMR going on within the brand. We're like, oh, this is kind of artistic. Let's bring that in. But like how we make the ASMR more authentic to a brand, because it's like kind of overused. It was a trend at the time. So if you look at the first video, it's like just my recording in a sound recording booth. So we were like recording the original sound made by the bag itself. And this one was just a bag kind of clicking. The sound is not coming out, but
it's a little bit quiet, I think.
Yeah, but we also did like the hardwares and like different parts of the bags. So this experience is about like kind of like showing people how a bag has been crafted, and the process was actually quite complicated. So we used those sound bits to make this customized soundtrack. If you hear a lot of the beats and then there's like kind of tingling sounds, is all from the bags. And then we feed the sound into the touch designer, because there's gonna be something like brand driven, right? So we did this horse and a carriage logo, but like make it react to the sound. So it also feels like there's a part in the bag making process is you paint the edge of the bag. So this is like mimicking the paint. And we did multiple kind of these bag making moments, and then we translated into 3D. And then I think that's the next page. Yeah, and then with these kind of bespoke 3D animation moments, or with all the sound playing in the space, that we designed this space, and then with we also filmed some footage of how the real craftsperson making the bag in the Hudson Yard. And then in this experience, we also have a performer actually making the bag in the middle. And then this whole environment is not rejecting audience, because you can just walk up there and touch the leather, and then they also have like this customized machine, so then you can talk to the performer and they will make this hand tag for you. So it's very kind of welcoming with like hospitality. Sorry, lost my cursor up here. Yeah, and this is just a short video showing the overview of this experience.
For those who are wondering, yes, I do hear that song all the time. So yeah, as we get into sort of a different topic, you'll start to see a few like recurring trends in some of the data that we pulled. This one's from Freeman. But this one's specifically looking at the gap in live experiences and sort of the lack of relationship that a lot of the brands that we work with are starting to see with their audiences, especially the younger and more emerging audience. So for this, like, what we have seen is, like, as brands have developed more comprehensive CRMs, more comprehensive data mining, and better abilities to actually sort of reach and understand their customers on, like, a data level, maybe in some cases better than they understand themselves based on their usage with Instagram or their social media tools or whatever, it's actually created a divide in how much time they're willing to spend with their customers, because the data tells, you know, to some of their minds, like, enough of a story on its own. But countering that back to the very first point we brought up when I pulled in these slides is clients or the customers and audiences are beginning to notice this. There's a disconnect that has not only been formed, but it has started to widen because brands are not actually doing what Cynthia was describing earlier and creating opportunities where they can be around their audiences in very realistic ways. And so, why is it not? So audiences are beginning to blame us for keeping them online.
Yeah, so in Session Online, we're always trying to create opportunities that bring people together for real. Even sometimes when people are together, it's like not really. We want their presence when they're experiencing in the environment that we designed for them. So this is a kind of a project. This is a project we did for Coinbase a couple months back. So I feel like whenever we do this kind of events for a big brand always drink their own Kool-Aid. They will always say, "Oh, this is the best product, launch ever." But like, I get you're passionate, of course. But how can we translate this kind of energy to our audience through our media strategy and the visuals? So we put a lot of thinkings into the kind of the stage design, worked with our event partners, and how we use their kind of branding language, but really bump it up and try to capture the energy through this a lot of very high beats, hyped up visuals. So, and I also think the energy that in a live event, like, we didn't create them, and people like bring the energy to the event. So all we need to do is to carry them. So we wanted our audience to feel like they're heard in this event. This event is the same way exciting as exciting as them. And then we also want them to feel being very hyped throughout the entire event.
I think what's interesting about this is, while it was a largely scripted event, they had guest speakers here and like had their CEOs sit down and do a conversational panel with them, and at least a few of them did not. Well, they didn't have scripts, but they went very far off the theme script. It was interesting seeing them contend with that in real time, which is very much a part of what we're getting at.
Yeah, and this is
the nucleus of this new on-chain economy happening today.
And I don't want to see that.
With the best-in-class trading and payment.
Yeah, but I think working for a show, it's interesting because we're not only caring for the audience energy, we're also caring for the speaker's energy too. Because it's a whole thing. Even it's a performance, but people bounce off of the environmental energy there. So in the same for this event, Revolu live event, it's also we did it last year, and it's an event that bring together creators, but also end on a Charlie XCX show. So there was a lot of fans. They're just not creators. They're fans, and they want to join this event. So, and this venue, Revolu took over this venue. This venue has more than 30 LEDs, and then the event lasts for 2 days. So we had to create a lot of kind of engaging content just constantly to like feed people, some sort of information, and then they can get feedback. There are live streams. There are different like rappers just to capture what's on site and happening in the real time. And then we also need to stay in a very kind of captivating the branding. So this is also a very exciting and also intense project we did last year. And then we also designed, some people very familiar with this, we also designed for a more professional event as well. Not only just a really hyped up event. So for spaces like this, we really want to use the branded content to create a space that the people feel like they want to connect with other professionals to provoke conversations. There is actually a sound design in this piece that is, play this. It is quieter in the real space because this was in Barcelona and we traveled there on site. It's quieter on the space, but you hear the energy here is like kind of inspirational, kind of encourage you to talk to people, and then people are also in the space under this branded content. You can constantly see what AVI SPL is doing in the space. So yeah, this is kind of B2B environment content we do.
Scott, Jesse, is it still in play?
ISE?
This was at ISE, but I think it was also maybe going.
InfoComm.
It was at InfoComm
Okay.
too, yeah.
All right,
So you had 2 shows out of that one.
cool.
I
Not
don't know
bad.
what's happening
Not
with the booth this year, I'll keep you posted.
Right, what was I gonna say here? Okay, yeah, I think one thing that was really sort of provocative for me in my research, and sometimes these are just like, oh shit moments when you're looking back on your own work and your audiences, is like, we have spent largely, I mean, for the better portions of our careers designing for Gen Z, which was, now actually getting closer to their 30s and getting closer to our generation. Coming up even under them are Gen Alpha, who have not only spent most of their time online, but actually don't remember a time period where there wasn't even AI at this point, which is literally the larger provocation here. So if you haven't noticed, we have these really disturbing, like, dystopian technology backgrounds here. These are the concerns that we largely deal with on our own. And so I repeat, Gen Alpha has never known a world without AI or being online. And so, the relationship they're forming with these tools that, like I said, we think of as tools or, creative mediums that expand on our own canvases, that's not necessarily how they're perceiving them. And so while we can go out there and have all this fun with these things that are sort of like magic to us, they're not that magical to them. For them, these are just sort of new expectations, the same way a VHS was for us.
Yeah, and we hear from brands all the time that they want to target the younger audience, want to target Gen Z. They're asking their marketing team that how can we, make something that really attracts the younger generations. And Sasamama has a very unique strategy in it because we don't design for Gen Z. We design with Gen Z. And then this is the win of the experience that we did, and this is because AI is this project started when coach clients went to a conference, saw NVIDIA has an AI concierge, like kind of doing nothing, and then they were like, oh, this is really cool. How can we bring this AI concierge into our experience? But from my POV, that's if you just have an AI there and on the screen, it's kind of boring. That would you talk to a digital human while in a physical space you have all the real human around you. So we brainstorm a lot in this activation for coaches. How can we actually make an AI concierge more interesting or feel more human and relatable? And then what we came out here is we want to give this AI a role, and we also collaborated with an IP called IMA in Japan. So IMA is this virtual idol. These people, they're cosplaying IMA. They're not. IMA never existed, but IMA has such a big fan base, just being like a non-real person, and it's like weirdly fitting in this AI concierge theme. And then so we started to design kind of personality for IMA and why IMA is in a coach world, because it's gonna be some reason there. And IMA's always very stylish, very trendy, so IMA will be a style guide. We also did did some research into the pop culture, and Jenny, I don't know if anyone knows her, but she's a K-pop star, and she released this kind of pop album with this very retro style, which actually also fits in the coach style. So we did a lot of the kind of tweaking on our directions, and then we also styled the IMA in this activation. And this is the kind of case the video and the.
Konnichiwa, it's Ima here. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm a virtual human from Japan. Are you eager to develop a better understanding of your style? How do you select apparel that makes you confident, that works with your existing clothing, that brings out the real you for each of the occasions and engagements on your horizon? You're not alone in this desire, which is why I've partnered with Coach to make brand wisdom accessible and tailored to you through AI. We've piloted the Style Coach experience on Cat Street in Japan. What makes this project so but this time, it's all about the experience. This isn't just another retail gimmick. This is how Coach is staying ahead of the game.
It's not just another retail gimmick.
It might be I didn't write that VO, okay.
Okay, so maybe just a little exposure here as well. Like, we're not presuming to stand up in front of you and lie and say we have like all the answers to these things yet either. I think what we're trying to contend with is the challenge, that these are things that are expected of us, and I think we're being required to show up with them in some kind of way. And so as those tools get better, we are trying to think of the right ways of integrating them in ways that people actually like. And so what I will say about the email project, as unsettling as that is for probably most of us, the reactions we got from the people who actually engaged with it was largely very positive. Because again, it's a different audience. And so when we think about authenticity and inclusion, these are very, very loaded words, I think, especially in the rhetorical climate that all of us are sort of contending with at the moment. But what I think is also interesting, again, is looking at emerging audiences as kids who have grown up in a time where I think largely social dialogues have advanced to a place where they're dealing with their peers in a way that, and I would dare say have, I think, advanced in some ways than what some of us have grown up with and contended with ourselves. And so they're not responding to the rhetoric with deep, instilled, fiery beliefs. They're looking at some of the things that we are instilling as expectations and requirements. So when they think of inclusion or expression or even simpler things like accessibility, ADA, those aren't just like nice to haves, they are requirements. And I would say that's largely true for any generation, especially, but also getting over it into representation, whether it's through our cultural projects or even our experiential, we really look at embodying our own values as a studio and ensuring that people are adequately represented. But the problem is there are a lot of audiences, and how do you contend with dealing with all of them?
Yeah, so in Sasamama, I really like to work with partners who truly knows their audience. It doesn't happen to every project that we take on, but whenever we have the opportunity to work with partners has a great subject matter, have a profound content, we always really appreciate the relationship and the project. So Kinfolk app is a AR app that actually preserves the living archives for kind of historical monuments. So these monuments told a story that has already been forgotten by the people. At least like I wasn't educated enough before I get engaged with them. I also learned a lot through the process, such as the AR monument in the middle. This is a Sentiment Park, which was the position in the current Central Park, but it was back in 1800s. And then it was a place that African American primarily had their own freedom and autonomy living in that space, but later on got removed and forcefully by the city about 20 years later. So history like this, and then this app doing a really good thing to tell the stories within their app. So they came to us, they'd be like, okay, so we want this exhibition and display our monuments, want to tell the story of history and engage people culturally and remind people these things happened in the past, but how can we, this is in WSA, it was a very empty space. And then when we design an exhibition for AR, because the issue with AR is it only exists on your phone. So if without the AR in the space, it's very empty. So what do we do there? So first, this is all of their monuments they want to display throughout the space. And first, we design the user journey, because I feel like if the space is already very open, then we should design a path for people to walk on, and then later on they can start to explore. Another theme and ideas throughout the space is we design a lot of kind of communal seating areas for people to spend time there, because they do have a lot of content. They even have a library in the space. So like having a space you can just relax, talk to your friends, or read some books about the history and then explore the AR would be really nice. We also got this palette, we got this recycled palette from a factory in Brooklyn. So it's also very eco-friendly. We also got a lot of plants, which is inspired by a lot of their cultural monuments. And then here is a short video.
And to answer a question you were saying earlier too, also providing ways of like showing the monument in accessible ways that not everybody would otherwise get to see if they were just using their phone. So we came up with a clever sort of mounted screen display in certain areas to like show the monuments just as they were. That shows like a video, right?
Yeah.
So this is a fun one too, which is interesting. I think for me as like someone who grew up, maybe like many of you, as like a tinkerer who played a lot of video games or watched a lot of films, and whether it was through deconstructing videotapes with magnets and seeing what kind of effects I would get out of them, or modding my games and creating like custom toolkits so I could play with their engines and make the games play the way I wanted them to. That is also true of the emerging audiences that we're seeing, especially in the younger ages. But they're not as willing necessarily to go through all the hoops that we were. And so for them, it's really become more of an expected way of interacting, that it is actually built into the media that we're constructing, that they should be able to have some kind of agency or control or design integration into it, such as with engines like Zepeto or Roblox or Minecraft for people who've seen that as well. So with emerging generations also preferring built Legos without manuals, which I think is something we can all relate to.
Yeah. And then in second line, we're not anti-digital at all. We're just co-creative digital. It's very hard to read. But it's not like we don't like AI or digital. Instead, we lean to them. We have this emerging artists and designers in our studio, and we design with them. They're not just interns. We often value their opinions very much, especially designing the content practically for themselves. And then we would always remind them, be like, are you excited about this directions? And if imagine you are the person playing this game, is this something would pique your interest? And they often give me very surprising answers, and we actually learn a lot. They're kind of our gaming strategy in the studio.
I think you have to share about that meeting.
What meeting?
Well, we had a call with like.
Oh yeah, we had a call with Roblox. I had a call with Roblox, and then I jumped on the call to meet them, their creator team. So apparently that game was largely created just by teenagers. So Roblox had to send an adult to be in the room to monitor the meeting. And I had this talk in my high school. It was very interesting, but they actually launched a very successful game despite they're all under 20.
As I said earlier, they were not impressed by us.
Yeah, yeah. And here are just some more content that our team, Gen Z team, they created. Yeah, like Coach loves this. Personally, I don't get why there's so many avatars of dancing, but we designed these like items, and then it's a hit. Kind of same, and this is another game activation we did on Snapchat, the emoji.
What's the one where they're yelling? Oh, that's
the 2K one, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna show content where people are yelling at the screen soon. I don't get it either, but
yeah. And I often had to download all these apps when I'm working on these projects, and then later on delete them. I often educate myself and then to dive in to just understand the content. And then these are gonna have some yelling people on the screen.
Brent, let's head over to this Coach store to see what the teas they got.
We recently did this game activation inside NBA 2K.
Coach Soho shoes. I like them better in person than on the game. My philosophy is if you look good, you play good.
If you look good, you play good. That's gold, man.
that's why I really like to buy snowboarding gear.
Yeah. And it's going back to like being authentic, because you really need to be authentic in these different gaming platforms. It's being native, you speak their languages, and then otherwise people will see, oh, this is just another brand trying to collaborate in this gaming place. But the only way that we can success when helping a brand into a gaming is to be very real.
I think one thing that keeps me up a little bit at night, and I won't like lie about my feelings on that, is these are very consumerist ideas. But like, not every young person can afford a Coach bag or a Coach shoe, but they can afford 99-cent like in-game editions, and apparently they really love to. Their parents' credit cards do not, but no, they genuinely, in many cases, have a very profound sense of joy with these things. And so as we sort of begin to wrap up the doom and gloom with some of our thoughts, in an era of chatbot frustration and digital clutter, it's the feelings that we craft, trust, joy, and belonging, that differentiate. And so I think what we are trying to contend with now is that, again, even as like this big introduction about how we're young and we're trying to be more in touch, and like we ourselves, think of ourselves as maybe part of a generation that, according to our birth years, we are not, we are finding that we are trying and struggling in some ways to remain in touch with the things that matter to them. And it is because, like, as a paradigm, we simply don't understand the same reality that they're growing up in. And so for us, it's like we are trying to sort of provoke ourselves and remain excited and joyful about the fact that we now have these younger audiences who are coming in that we can actually learn and then sort of apply what I think is our thesis are actually better for older generations and us as well. So our solution is diversity and co-creation. I'm going to hand this one to you, actually.
Yeah,
This is design principles for us.
Yeah, so we are a studio fundamentally believing design first. We use a lot of technology in our work, but we think design is really the means and the tools to shape an experience to really bring out the intent and to, as all the things that we just spoke about is to create ways that to connect with our audience, because I think feeling is our proof that you can feel if the audience is feeling it or not. So, and a lot of the things that we are, we are trying to address it through our design.
I think hopefully we haven't shown you anything ugly, because our opinion is that if we are visually aggressive and we make beautiful things, then in some ways those are giving us access to the audiences that we're trying to work with some of these brands. And by way of making really attractive things for these audiences, they are giving us really, really positive feedback on how we can continue to improve. Whether it's things like EMA, which frankly are just not simply there yet, but are still kind of fun for the people that care, or screaming at your screen on 2K, or just making really crazy, exciting events in large LEDs like we all love to do. So design leads understanding. Technology amplifies voices, therefore audiences feel heard. For us, we lead with the design. We think of technology having not really like a full-time in-house creative tech team as something that is really meant to be deployed when we have the right understanding of the audience that we're looking to work with. And as you've noticed, many of our projects do work with pretty complex and integrated systems. We naturally tend to find ourselves because we think that's where we're trying to meet audiences where they are.
Yeah, and then these are just my happy photos of our team and then all the events that we've been to together. We've hosted some events with other studios, and then we often have just like emerging designers visiting our studio. Our studio door is always open, and we truly believe in this diversity. Maybe because of our background, it's kind of hard to not to believe it. But I truly believe diversity brings in innovation, and then we love talking to different, artists, designers, and the idea emerges in an environment that feels very welcoming and inclusive.
So those who are convinced that we didn't pull this together very quickly, if you have any questions for us, let us know. Am I supposed to call on people? Is there someone else? I saw your hand first.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you just mentioned like the systems becoming more complex, and like over time the tools that we use have become much more advanced. But it looks like a lot of the things that appeal to Gen Alpha is like kind of retro, or like with Roblox, like low I'm just wondering, like, if you have any thoughts on like why there's like a divide between like how advanced the technology is versus how less advanced the aesthetic is.
I think, and this is interesting, the Roblox thing was surprising to me, because I look at this stuff, I look at Minecraft, I'm like, this is ugly as hell. I just lied to all of you and said we make beautiful things, and then I showed you Roblox. But what I mean by that is, yeah, there seems to be a different relationship they have with jankiness. You know, I think in their mind it really is about like having some sort of ownership or authorship over the content itself, and that's really what those systems in particular do. Even the EMA thing was like, they were just excited that they could talk to this thing that was like an Instagram follower, and largely convince themselves of the things that we're trying to basically convince them of, that this is like effectively a real person. And you know, the same way we talk to each other with lag on our Zoom calls, that's just what they dealt with that. And I think their willingness to suspend disbelief when the content lands is where the success is.
Yeah, I had this discussion with our younger folks in the studio. I was like, so why do you like kind of janky stuff? And they were like, we grew up, you know, we grew up with iPads. Everything's like smooth. If it's like perfectly done digitally, it should be like very intuitive. They don't even think about like having an iPhone or something. And all the apps is like called a technology. They call it a commodity. It is different for us because when I was born, I don't think internet was like there for everybody, and then we had this process. You know, it's a ramp-up process. Every year we saw something new, and we get excited. It's like, oh, my dad get a better computer, and the next year we get a faster internet. But it's completely different for the younger audience. So I think they're so used to how good technology is, so they're looking for something different, which they sometimes found in Roblox and then some lo-fi analog stuff.
I saw you as well, yeah.
Just curious, I saw you touch on some cultural things like the monuments and all that sort of stuff, as we go from there. I'm wondering if you set yourself up sometimes that the people who are bringing you in take all the glory, but if it doesn't work or it triggers somebody culturally, you take all the blame. I did, you know, again, we did the Aboriginal Achievement Awards. The producer himself was indigenous, and some of the items he brought on, right, other indigenous groups were complaining about, and it's like, guys, like, you know, you want to get somebody who's close, it's like they're just within the same group, so I'm just wondering if all of a sudden you're going, yeah, we'll be the scapegoats.
Well, we're going to be whether we want to or not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you do get used to that on some level. I will say, I mean, having worked on everything from like a race riot museum to religious museums to Holocaust museums, you're really not going to hit every audience correctly. So we try to consider ourselves as catalysts as much as we can to make sure that we're routing the content that we're given. We try to intimately understand it, whether it's a Holocaust museum or it's Roblox. We just try to make sure that the audience, the intended audience, has the respected relationship with it. Okay. Yeah.
When you're working with your clients, do you feel like they have an understanding of like what the ROI is on things that maybe can't be measured with numbers, like in-person events?
That's you.
Yeah, I think we had this long relationship with working with the coach, and they are a very good client because they do understand a lot of the stuff we do is like a pilot, a test, and a try. A lot of things cannot be quantified into certain numbers. But in the recent years, we do start to plan these hooks wherever we can. If it's a digital activation, we're always trying to capture how many people visited and the stay and the return rate and all that. So whenever I feel like we could capture these, we also worked with in-store, so they all have this kind of head counts thing on the door. So just whenever we have stuff we can leverage and then build into like the matrix of the experience that we would. But yes, still we have a lot of experiences. It's just, you know, when it's over, it's based on your feeling. I felt like it went well.
Scott?
I'll talk to you about it later.
I was really curious when designing for younger audiences, a lot of these in-person events seem to be in different countries and different places. Do you find that youth culture is different place to place, and do you take that into consideration? Or is there like a globalized youth culture that you guys mostly target?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think that there is a kind of universal youth culture, but also very different in different regions. I haven't done, projects in every region. It's just mostly in the North America and Asia, and has been mostly in China, Japan, sometimes Korea. So I'm more familiar with the youth culture in these two kind of markets. I would say there is a lot of things is similar. Like they are, they are all very interested in kind of analog and then kind of lo-fi stuff. But I think the difference is, I think in Asia, I guess that's a culture difference. So in Asia, that people, I would say a little bit more reserved, or they feel like the society is, that's getting really deep, but they feel like being still suppressed by society a little bit more. So they were like looking into a little bit more subcultural trends. So when we look up these mood boards for the Asia cultures, we're trying to dive into something really specific and a niche, like something like IMA. It's a very niche thing, but here that we would do things a little bit universal, kind of, because I feel like people here, like Roblox has a really big, fandom, and then even audience on Roblox is different, but they all like this kind of similar thing on a very big platform.
I think if I were to guess at like a few through lines there, I mean, and Cynthia already talked about it, but like access to information, democratization of information in regions like China where internet is restricted or in some cases like routed, there is a craving for authenticity and access to that information. But interestingly, like here where there's way more open, like free range, there's a distrust of certain information. And so there's that same expressed desire for the same authenticity and truth. There's just sort of this different barrier that we try to address.
How do you guys find like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, getting them to participate? Like, because there's a lot of social dynamics that develop online in game that sometimes go across to the real world, sometimes don't. So like building those bridges, is it?
And it's a very good, very hard question. So a lot of the game activation we do, we're not actually anticipating it to go beyond the game that much. It is, if it's just can be, known within its own community, that's already good enough for our KPI. Just because these days the youth culture, although all the brands are talking about youth culture, but actually, how can you say every single young person loves the same thing, right? It's all different tribes. So we just need to enter different tribes in different culture. So some more interested in music, some interested in gaming, some interested in, analog telephone. So we need to show up and meet them at where they are. And I think that's where they start to like have this awareness of the brand.
Yeah, I think, I would struggle to articulate what I mean by this as well, but like, if ever there was, back to sort of the distrusting, if Gen Z especially ever feels like they're being sold something, it's like immediate allergic reaction. Maybe you can validate this for me. But anytime there's an opportunity for them, again, to have like any kind of authorship or self-inclusion where they can imagine themselves, whether it's in the brand or the game or whatever we create for them, and it's fun. I mean, I guess you could apply that to any audience, but I think the expectation is greater that they have access to that we're not telling them exactly what to do, that they have more free range, and then it's a little bit chaotic. These things are very chaotic. Hi.
Gen X here.
We're all millennials. That's just my justification for this.
Have you done anything to try to target old people, or are you like strictly interested in Gen Alpha and whatever comes after?
Well, I'll just walk you over to my museum section of the work. No, I mean, my belief is that a lot of it still applies. I mean, I find myself in a really happy middle part of all of this, where My Mind does work with a lot of Gen Zs, and so they have very much influenced my outlook. But the vast majority of my work has been in, very, I would say, like rich content spaces, and less commercial sales. So my relationship with Gen Z is very much in a lot of the commercial and brand work, whereas my relationship with established audiences is more in the cultural space. But I think the expectations are there. It's just the expression of it is different. Gen X's in general have the same appreciation for things like accessibility or inclusivity. They just don't articulate it as bluntly as some of our younger. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, I have
that's
an interesting marketing report to share with you because the first year after we work with coach to really hard targeting Gen Z, and the first year marketing report actually showed us we attract more women in their 40s because they think their kids think coach is cool, so they are going to buy coach.
Targeting their parents, right?
Yeah.
Using the kids as a sort of vector to get.
It was like kind of accident. It was okay.
I'm curious how you would answer your own question.
I don't know, I might not be a good example. I think I don't like being sold to either.
Dude, I was
so
gonna say
maybe
Gen
I'll be-
X, we were the original didn't want to be sold to.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. We're like, oh, we already did that. Yeah. Anyway, we do have to wrap up, so I just want to, so that's where we carry the conversation on outside the room. That's what we should do right now. Thank you so much. You guys really, thank you so much.
Thanks everyone.